to Changing the Sales Game on webtalkradio.com. I'm your host, Connie Whitman. I'm really happy that you're joining us this week. So as you listen to the show, no matter where you are on your journey of changing your sales game, changing your career, whatever it might be, I truly hope my guests and I provide insight, tips, strategies, ideas for you to take action immediately after listening to the show, right? Action is where we create some magic in our life. Well, to help you on changing your sales game, in the show notes, you'll find my link to my communication style assessment. You'll get 2 reports. One will just spotlight your natural communication superpowers. I believe it's important for us to understand as we communicate with other humans, right? That's where we're functioning, that we're articulating and our message is landing a certain way. We need to understand what that is. Flip side, how about the folks that speak 180 degrees different than us? Probably even more important. So you'll get a second report kind of shining a light on your potential blind spot. And again, I hope that helps you navigate changing whatever it is in your life. But at the core, it always boils down to effective communication. Now, my quote today to set the stage for the conversation with my guest is by Winston Churchill. And Winston says, "Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm." And boy, when I read that quote, I thought, yeah, that's about right. I know I have failed many times in my life, probably more than I'd like to count. And we see quotes like this when we're in crisis or facing failure and think, BS, right? I failed. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve success. Whatever the rhetoric or that record player that's playing in your head, it almost gets louder. And there lies the issue, I think. It's our own mind. The negative record player just amplifies and gets louder, that we're not good enough with X, Y, or Z, or whatever it is we're attempting. What I've learned is that in the face of failure, you have to try not to let failure overcome you, whether for reasons under your control or the change or whatever is happening is thrust upon you. You have to keep moving forward. So who is my amazing guest, where we're going to really dig into this topic of mindset and failure and getting back up and starting over again, if you will. His name is Steven Pemberton. Now, Steven is a husband, father, speaker, business owner, and he speaks transparently about working through business failure, losing everything, spending 5 years and 5.5 years in corporate, then being a co-founder of 2 different e-commerce companies that grew to million in top line sales individually. He is also the co-founder and CEO of Holoco,
yep.
Holoco, yeah, a company that specializes in virtual events, marketing, and e-commerce consulting. He's been featured in numerous publications, podcasts, and summits. Please help me welcome Steven to my show, my podcast. So Steven, thanks for being on and taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I think I need to take that quote and just tattoo it on my forehead.
It's a good one, isn't it?
It's a great quote.
Yeah. But isn't that where innovation and where I think resilience comes from? It's in the failure, not in the successes, right? Think of the butterfly when it's in its chrysalis, right? It's got to fight to get out. If we ripped it for them, they immediately die. So that struggle almost makes us stronger to do whatever that next iteration of our life is. So
yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. It's actually really interesting you use that analogy, because my wife and we found a Luna moth. It's a beautiful moth. If you don't know what it is, look it up. And it's very rare for you to see it. Is it rare? Not necessarily, but it's rare for it to be around humans. And so we found it. We actually ended up releasing it today because we had it in our house for a little bit and we took it out and released it. But what's so fascinating about that creature is the same thing you said. It was a caterpillar. It went into a chrysalis, and then it comes out as a beautiful butterfly, or a beautiful moth. But what's amazing about it, it only has 7 days to live. So if we went through the pains, the struggles, the levels of suffering, and we knew we had a time limit, what would you be willing to do? I think so often I've had this happen with me where it's, I've got tomorrow, I've got another month, I've got 10 more years, I'll figure it out then. It's like, but what if you knew that you didn't? What would you be willing to go out there and put on the line?
Yeah. And it's interesting as I'm aging, right? I'm at the tail end of my career in business. So I'm thinking about succession planning, selling my business. What are those pieces of the puzzle? But it's interesting you just said that, because in my mind, Stephen, you're running out of time. You're running out of time, right? Because I am at the tail end. So I feel like I have no time to waste, which is pressure in its own way. But I love that concept of, if you knew you only had a day to live or 2 days to live or a week to live, what would you do differently? Right. And maybe not put so much pressure, whatever, but what would you do differently? I love that way of thinking. I'm curious, what was your first experience in business? Because I know you failed just like all of us, but what was your first experience?
I was 19 years old and my son had just been born, and I ended up quitting my job. It was a little bit after he was born. 6 months later, I quit my job, and my wife had stayed home once my son was born, and she was running this little online business, and it made $500 in a month. And I thought, oh, wow, you can make money at home. Because at that time I was working in a warehouse. So what I decided to do was, at 19, I was like, hey, let's do it. Let's just both jump into it. And it's amazing to see how fast you can go from optimism to pessimism. Because pretty much as soon as I quit, I'm sitting there just trying to get anyone and everyone to buy this thing because I need to take care of my family. But I had no skills. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know how to even honestly talk to people. And I didn't even know if the product was good. So I had everything wrong with it. So pretty shortly after that, I was really only in that business for less than 6 months, maybe 4 months. Then we lost everything. Luckily, we had some family that was willing to take us in. And I just remember being 20 years old and being in this basement and just wanting to die, honestly, because I thought my life was over, which is insane to think about now that I'm 30. I was 20 years old. It's like you have the entire rest of your life to figure it out. But I'd put so much pressure on myself because I thought I'm the husband, I'm a father, I've got to take care of the household. And now we've lost everything, living in someone else's basement. And they couldn't even really take care of us because they were barely making ends meet. So it was just this really high pressure situation. But what was amazing was what came out of that. Because, I mean, there was times that, like I said, I was at the point of honestly contemplating suicide, but I just kept moving forward. And it got to the point where I was eating like the Nature Valley Crunch bars, the ones that are really messy when you open them and they just fall everywhere. That was my entire day worth of food. Like, that's all I would eat. I would eat 2 of those a day. And I just never gave up. Like, I think that was the big thing that I learned. And that was a skill that carried me even into business now, because you need that. Like, just don't quit. You only really lose when you quit. So that was my first experience with business, was honestly losing everything.
And isn't that funny? And everybody listening, they're thinking, he was 20, what's wrong with him? But at 20, that reality was your reality. You still had a baby, right? You had a wife, you had a family, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I failed at the epic level. We lose everything. We have to move in with family in a basement. Like, talk about rock bottom. But what a great lesson early on in your career, because here's the thing, at the end of the day, you survived eating the Nature Valley granola bars. But you survived. Your kid is now, 10 plus, and you're 10 years in. So every experience really adds to our life, our job, our career, our business. And I don't know if you remember, Steve Jobs, before he passed, he spoke at one of the Harvard. It wasn't Harvard. It was one of the Ivy League schools, though. Yeah. And it was interesting in his address. He said to the students, he goes, here's the deal. You're graduating. You think, what am I going to do? What's going to make me happy? He said, trust me, 20, 30, 40 years from now, you're not going to be doing what you think you're doing now. And I listened to this address and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so true. 4 decades in, who would have thought I'd be doing what I'm doing? And the other thing he said, which I thought was fascinating and alludes to what you're saying with losing everything at 20, but what a great foundation for becoming this successful, multi-successful business owner, right? With multi-businesses. He said, when he looks back at when he was, because I don't think he finished college, but he said, when he looks back to his 20s to where he was now, he said every step and misstep he took led him to where he is today. So he said, I couldn't have changed those steps or those missteps, or I wouldn't be here today. So the path, even though it's unclear, just take one step forward. Any step forward, you're heading in the right direction. That's basically what you just said. You didn't give up. You said, I got a family. I got to keep going. Let me try this. Let me try that. And it's a trial and error oftentimes, right?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think... Now, there's some people who they just get it right on their first go around, but even huge businesses like Google has a graveyard of businesses that they've killed off. And unfortunately, with my generation and younger, is they want the silver bullet. They want to find the business that's going to work right now. I want to get from wherever I'm at to $10,000 a month. I don't know why that's the number. $100,000 a year really isn't what it used to be. No. But that number to people, they just think that that's freedom when realistically that's not. There's a lot of questions you got to ask. Is that revenue? Is that actually profit? If you're working a job, you probably don't even know the difference. And that was me. But honestly, I've just seen for my own life and from the successful business owners that I know is everyone had to fail at some point. And honestly, failure is how you figure out what you're actually good at. That's where you actually get to build your character. It does not come from making $1 million a year. It does not happen there. Yes, you get to learn different skills, and yes, you have different levels of freedom. But the things that really transform you, that help you be able to impact the people you're called to, is when you are in the dirt. Like when you have lost everything and you're sitting there, or you're just trying to pivot and figure out what do I need to do next? That's where your skill sets, that's where your character are built.
It's so true. And I don't know if you were e-commerce already, you're younger. So when COVID hit,
Yep.
like Steve and I'm old, right? So I did everything live, analog, nothing was digital. And now all of a sudden the world stopped. My clients reached out and they said, we're done. Like we can't do any training. The whole world is shutting down. And my husband's company closed. Everybody knows the story. And I remember literally vomiting for like a day because here I had been, 30 something years successful and ups and downs, don't get me wrong, but overall successful.
Yeah.
And I had earned income since the age of 13 and I had no income coming in and he had no income coming in. And I thought we're going to lose everything. Thank goodness my dad was still alive. I said, we can always move in with him, right? There was a safety net. But here's the thing. What do you do? I vomited. I felt bad for myself, the victim mentality for about 24 hours. And I thought, well, what can you control? Take classes. It's digital, learn digital. What does that mean? What do you need to create? What do you already have created that you could digitize? How do you sell it? How do you create this website? What's an e-commerce? Stripe? What's Stripe? Like all gibberish to me, Steven, gibberish. And now 5 years later, I'm doing better than I did prior to COVID. And now I have multiple lines of revenue coming in. Never dawned on me because I didn't know what I didn't know. That was talk about failure and then just the rising from the ashes. You can't give up and you have to learn from it. Here's the thing though, and this is my next question actually for you. When that happened, I understood business because I had been in business for 19 years or 20 years. So I can reiterate, right? I had to pivot and learn, but I understood business. I understood networking. I understood sales. So I leveraged that. So now my question with you, when your business failed, right? And you're living in the basement eating these granola bars.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to pivot and then get back into another business? Like what did that, from this failure to, what was the next step for you?
Honestly, it took 6 years. So it took quite a while. And my encouragement to people, if you're in your 20s, like I was, and you just failed in a business, try again. Like for me, I became bitter. When the business failed, I said, okay, all business sucks. I've never seen anyone be successful with business. This is a scam. I'm just going to go back to work. And that's what I did. And I ended up getting a warehouse job. It says corporate. That's what I sent over. I say corporate, but I use that word loosely because I was in a warehouse and I was working 16 to 18 hours every single day for about 5 years, 5.5 years or so. And yes, I got promotions and did all that, but it never equivalated to freedom. And I was never going to achieve a certain level of success. Like when you're climbing the corporate ladder, unless you're at the top of the rung, you will never be what you quote unquote successful. So for me, it took all of that time. And realistically, what got me back into business was not because I wanted to be. My wife in 2018, we were making enough money after my promotions that she was able to stay at home with our son. And so I'm working, I'm bringing home all the money. She's wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And then she got fed up with it because she is one of the hardest working people I know. I honor her on every single opportunity I get because she's not only the hardest worker I know, but she's so smart. So she did the cardinal sin though, and went on social media and put up a post that she was miserable with her life. And luckily, the person who reached out to her was my mom. And my mom has done a lot of different businesses, not really successfully. She's just done a whole bunch of stuff. And she reached out to my wife and she said, hey, I'm doing this Amazon thing. Do you want to do it with me? And she sent her a few videos. She said, review these videos and get back to me Monday. So this was Saturday. She gets really sick. She talks to me and asks me on Sunday, hey, what do you think about this? And I said, absolutely not. I said, there is no way we're going to get back in business. You remember the last one? Like the last one that we lost everything and had to move into a basement? I said, I'm good now. It's like, I'm over this entire warehouse. It's like, I'm in line to take over part of the region. It's like, absolutely not. And then Monday rolls around, my mom reaches back out to her. And of course, she doesn't take my advice and she says, yes, I'll do business. I'll do this Amazon thing. And at first, it caused a huge divide in our house. I was fully against her. I was the most unsupportive husband of all time. I was just sitting there against her every single moment. Hey, why is this dirty? Why is this not done? I can't believe you're doing this. Why are we doing business? It's like, I'm making all this money. You're not doing anything. And then I remember when everything changed. Yeah, it was bad. But I remember when everything changed. There was a day I worked 14 hours straight. I come home, it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and she's still up working. I go to sleep, I wake up, she's up working. So I did the math and I went, so she was working when I went to sleep. She's working before I'm awake. I said, so she at least did 17 hours. I said, so she's outworking me. So yes, the money's not there yet. It's like, but I'm actually doing less. So then I started picking up all the chores. I did everything to support her. And it was amazing to watch her go from someone who would cry getting a return or a 1-star review to it turned into $1 million business by the end of 2019. Now, granted, everyone listening, $1 million in revenue. The margins were terrible. We had, at that time, it was 6 employees. So we brought home like less than $100,000 is what we actually got to keep. Okay. But we made $1 million. But I got to see her go through that whole cycle. So in 2020 is when I ended up leaving my job. But we can talk about that in a minute. But the whole fact that got me back into business was her being willing to put up with my mouth and me being the biggest roadblock in our household. That's what got me back into it, because I got to see it was possible. Like, I think that that's something that most people don't see, is it's possible. If you don't believe it's possible, you'll never try again. For me, there was nobody in my family, nobody in my community, none of my friends that were successful in business. So why would I think that a business could make me successful? But if you can rewire your brain by listening to shows like this and see that it is possible, yes, you may have failed. That's fine. You got to learn something there. But it is possible for you to be successful. There are so many examples of it.
Yeah. And it was funny, Stephen, when my kids played hockey, they were both goalies. And so I remember we'd get in the car. They were young, maybe 10, 12, right? Yeah. So of course, offense, they let me down. They left me hanging in the net, right? And we'd be in the car and I'd say, oh, you're perfect. You know, you let in a couple of goals. And they go, yeah. And I'd say, wait, the third goal. And they go, yeah. I go, well, what happened there? Oh, my angles were off. I said, so, and they go, I'll never do that again. And I go, then that was a great goal. You're going to learn from that mistake. Yeah, now you understand that angle or however the play was unfolding for them. You saw it differently. Now you can't unknow it. So they would get, oh, mom, they left me hanging. You know, kids, right? But I would, and they'd go, you're right, because they learned from that. They learned self-respect. They've learned demanding respect from their teammates, all while these failures were happening all the time. We forget that, though, that we forget what we learned when we're a kid, because it's exactly what you said. We get in our own head. Oh, I don't know anybody that's successful. Oh, this whole business thing, what a scam. These people out there, they're posting crap. It's nonsense, right? That's what's going through our head because we don't have a way to do it. And then you saw your wife do it. She's a rock star, by the way. I'm loving on her right now. Yeah. But isn't that, and then the other piece of that I just want to comment on, what a great thing for your mom to reach out to her, right, to your wife, and for your wife to find the trajectory of her next step. You never know. That's the other piece of the puzzle. You never know where the help is going to come from, but we have to be open to receiving it. And it sounds like your wife was like, I don't want to just sit at home anymore. I need more for myself, right? Even though you were not a nice husband at that time. She had her own vision of self, and then the right opportunity present itself. So that's the idea too. I think with the mindset shift, we have to do a little bit of shifting before good things enter our lives. We're our own roadblock, right? Right, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. And I think that even what you just said, I mean, I've experienced that, yes, with my mom doing that for my wife. And even recently, like we just brought on a partner that we have been looking for a long time. And he was already in my network. I'd already been talking to him for a year. But then the business presented itself. He comes on board and it's been amazing. So and like you said, is this getting out of your own way? For me, the guy has been in business for 18 years. For me, I have not been in business near as long. He's been much more successful, sold a company for multi 6 figures, almost 7 figures. Nice. And that was just his share. That wasn't even the entire company. And so really successful. And he's pretty much my age. And so he's been working for a long time. And I'm just thinking, I don't know if I know what he knows, but then there's so much value for you to add. Like that's the thing is if you're either one of two people. Is for me, I'm the one who always tries to be like more humble. Like I take the low road, but a lot of times I shoot myself in the foot where I will walk into rooms and say, I don't even know why I'm here. What am I supposed to offer? And I don't realize until I get out of my own way, like you said a second ago, that there is so much that I have to offer from not only my experiences that I've gone through, but actually the skill sets I have. Yes, you and I may be in the same field. You and I both have to do sales, but I promise you, you have a different way of doing things than I do. If we are, no one is made identically the same. No one does things identically the same. We all have our own unique flavor to it.
Yeah. And that's the other piece of the puzzle too. I think in business, I learned early on, when I started sales in my 20s, working for an insurance company, whoever the client was in front of me, I didn't go in with a preconceived notion of I have to sell, right, for the money.
Yeah.
It was always, I hope I can help these people. I knew what I knew, right? I was licensed and all that. But I would walk in and I customized every solution because I felt that's what the client deserved of me. Well, unbeknownst to me, how I was raised and how I looked at other humans and people, I always wanted to serve and take my zone of genius to help them, right?
Yeah.
And, then you take that trajectory. That taught me my sales process, which now I'm able to teach, which make people comfortable because it's a comfortable way to sell because it's never about me and my products. It's always about, let me see if I can help you. Hey, and if I can, I have a huge network. I'm sure I can refer you to somebody.
That's
so
good.
Coming in with that, honesty, I guess it is, integrity, people are more open versus what you were saying before when you quit your job and you were like, well, now I have to make business. Nothing's coming in. Desperation does not create sales, right? Yeah. It's like the dog knows that there's fear. They can smell fear. It's the same thing. The client could smell when you're desperate. So we again, get out of our own way. We all bring something special to the table. None of us are the same. I'm curious, why did you shift from the product selling online and then you went into the B2B world, the business to business? Why? What was that kind of pivotal moment for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when we launched our second company that ended up going to $1 million in 2021, that one was really cool because my mom became a successful investor on that one. And she was our biggest backer. So mom got to make quite a bit of money on that business. Nice. But what was amazing was during that time, because my wife and I are very much like you, we want to serve. So we started doing online events. We did them for ourselves. We were helping marriages of all things. We were not doing business ones. And that's kind of where we started. So we had a pretty big event. It was about 100 people or so. And then we started doing those pretty consistently. We do them once a month or so. And then in 2022, because we had over leveraged a lot on Facebook. Facebook was our biggest sales channel, and we weren't really doing anything else on other sales channels, which is a big no-no. Yeah. Now, and I know that now, but that's one of those lessons, right? But Facebook, we were super over leveraged on it. So when anytime Facebook would change an algorithm, then it would just tank our business. So what happened is it just got too much like being out in rough seas. And we sat there and we talked about it. For us, our faith is big. So we prayed about it and we felt like we were supposed to transition away from that business. So we shut that business down, and it was not, so clean as just shutting something down. We had 4 employees. So we had to figure out, for them, we help them transition to other jobs. That's what we always do. Nice. We want to make sure we take care of people. Absolutely. And so then when we made that transition, we in the beginning, we were going to do brick and mortar stuff. We were going to do more things in e-commerce. And we got a client doing brick and mortar and helping them come online. And that didn't really go the way we expected. We were able to help them, but not to the extent that we really felt comfortable to scale that. And so I'm just sitting there saying, I don't know what to do. And this lady comes to me and she says, hey, Steven, I know that you don't do virtual events or you don't do any kind of online events anymore. And I know you don't help people with it. It's like, but I've spent $10,000 on consultants and I'm still in the same exact spot. She said, can you help me at least just set up the tech stuff? And I said, sure. And so I think it was maybe $1,500. It wasn't a lot. And she pays it. I come in, we help her run the entire event, and it goes really well for her. She gets some really good strategic partnerships signed. And I said, hey, maybe we have something here. Then we ended up getting another client. It was a big PR agency. We were working with them. And then from there, we just kept bringing on clients. And like you said, as we started focusing on how can we help them? How can we serve them at the highest level? And getting out of the way of being in this moment, it's like, hey, we just shut down this business. We got to figure something out. But when you start doing it that way and start serving the clients, it's incredible to see how everything around you changes. But most importantly, the thing that changed the most in me over the last couple of years has been me. I mean, we're just a little bit over 2 years removed from shutting down that business. And the biggest thing that's changed, and now I have real skills. Now I know that the things that I thought I knew, I didn't really know. Because when you're having to build from the ground up with Facebook was a lot of timing. And timing is a big deal when it comes to business, but that one was a lot of timing. They had just opened up shipping on Marketplace, and when we started listing our inventory, it just blew up. We were getting 1 million organic visitors per month to our store. That's a lot. And I didn't even know what that meant back then, but we're just sitting there making money hand over fist. And I didn't actually have skills. Now I actually have skills. I've actually built business from the ground up. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge blessing. And it's that whole course. And that's why we transitioned into B2B. Now the margins are a lot better than that 20-25%. And I think that that's been good and bad with B2B. The difference between B2B and B2C, for me at least, B2C is you have those really quick feedback loops where you're sitting there, Shopify, you got to sell, you got to sell, you got to sell. B2B, you may go quite a while without getting a sale, and then there's a big one comes in, and then you're good, and then you go get another big one. But that was also a mindset shift too, to be able to delay gratification. It took me a little while, but that was a big one.
Yeah, a couple of things you said in there that I think are critical, and I wrote the word consistent down. You said we consistently did the whatever monthly that you ran. That's where I see a lot of businesses fail. They do it, and then they don't have success, so they move on and they move on and they move on. And as salespeople say, I'm in a slump. I said, I'm going to change. You were successful doing what you hit a slump. Keep doing what you were doing. Maybe take a mindset class, right? It's something's happening internally. It's not the external. But when you're in the weeds, you can't see the forest. So consistency, I think, is now consistency. If you have bad behaviors, stop doing them consistently. But if you know your behaviors, your system, it works, but you hit a slump and you think, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Really dangerous. So consistency that works, keep doing. That's number one. You're showing up and you're visible. And the other thing you said that it popped into my head, and I've shared this story on the show a few times. Years ago, I have another show. I have 2 podcasts. My other one is called Enlightenment of Change. Well, that one I started probably about 13, 14 years ago, before I knew anything about anything. Let me tell you, Steven. But I remember I was about a year in, and the producer says to me, she was coaching me to make me a better host. And she goes, it's like because I live in Jersey. She goes, it's the Jersey show. You need to get people from around the world. I go, anybody else? I know people in Jersey. Where do you think I grew up and worked my whole career? Now, remember, this was before digital. I did everything, live. She says, well, it just sounds like a Jersey show. I was like, all right. So at dinner, I tell my husband, he goes, what are you going to do? I go, I don't know. I go, the universe is going to take care of it, because I have no idea how to find people outside of this country to come on my show. Why would they want to come on my show? I go, the universe will take care of me. Stephen, within 2 weeks, these different PR companies found me. I did not do any outreach. She did not. I called her. I said, did you do this outreach? She goes, I don't know what you're talking about. They found me via email, and now I'm booking out 3-6 months in advance on the show, both shows, because of that. But it's that divine intervention. Sometimes you just have to say, I know what I'm doing is the right thing. I don't know what I'm missing. Universe, show up for me, or whatever it might be. Show up for me. Like you said, you have a partner now. He showed up. He was there, but he showed up for the opportunity once it became clear to you. So, life is messy.
Yes. And I think that that's such a good point, though, is don't consistently do the things that you know are bad behaviors. I think that when we talk about consistency, I actually asked a good buddy of mine. He's been doing high level strategy for corporations and big companies for years, well over a decade. He's going on almost 2 decades now. And I asked him, I said, how long do you do something until you stop doing it? And he said, that's a great question. Because you would think with strategy, you've got your 6-month plan, your 1-year run, you've got your 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And I said, you're the strategy guy. You tell me, how long do I take an action until I stop doing the action? He said, well, it depends on the action. If you have to give it enough time to get the results that you want. And so often, especially with my generation and younger, they just expect it to be quick and to be easy. It's like, but you've done 10 cold DMs on social media and you think that you should have a client by now. It's like 10's not enough. It's like, yeah, maybe you could have really helped those 10, but 10 is not enough. You haven't done enough of the actual actions. Yeah, maybe you've done 10 sales calls and you haven't closed any, but 10 is not really enough. If you're not practicing, you're not working on it, you're not actually figuring out if your product is good, if you're not working on any other aspects of the business, sales is just one of those extra things. What are you actually working on? And having a consistent, like you said, having consistent systems, whether you call it a system or don't, but getting enough actions in the right direction and just not stopping. If you start getting results over a certain amount of time, that's when you can get data. If you realize out of 1,000 cold DMs that you do on social media, you book 100 sales calls, then you just need to do 1,000 to book 100 sales calls. Now those 100 sales calls, you close 10 of them. So that means that there's things you can work on there. You can get better at your cold DMs. You can get better at the sales calls, which then equals more closing. Or you can just get better at the sales calls, have the same amount of volume, get better at the sales calls, go from 10 to 20. You've just doubled your business. Yeah. And I think that so often we will just, like you said, throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. And systems work. But it's the rinse and repeat. Once you get it to the point of rinse and repeat it, because now you can scale it. You can't scale it until you get it to the point where you're just locked and loaded, right? Yeah. That's the other problem. The other thing too with the B2B, because that's, where I play as well. You get more consistent sales, so the ups and downs aren't so high and low. You know what I mean? You get a little bit more consistency because they're just bigger ticket items. But because you're building a reputation, they bring you back, right, to train their employees or teach their employees or what the next piece of business, in your case, that they're creating. So there's so much opportunity because they're bigger. And the other thing I wanted to say is you have to test things. And you were saying it. When you do the one-on-one, hey, how did that work for you? Tell me what worked. Can you do a testimonial? It's immediate and it's quick. When you're dealing with a corporate client, the runway, the sales process itself is longer. Developing those relationships takes a little bit longer to prove that like, no trust, because it's not as intimate as the one-on-one. What would be the 3 top tips that you kind of go to when you're selling your high ticket offer? And then believe it or not, we're out of time, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, my top 3 tips when it comes to selling a high ticket offer is you said this earlier, and I feel like people might have missed it, but you have to look at a sales opportunity as not transactional, but relational. When you were on sales calls, like you said, when you were doing insurance in your early 20s, is you cared more about the person on the other end of the line or the person across the desk from you than you did about you making money. Yeah. That is first and foremost. It doesn't matter if you're about to lose the house, about to lose a car. You cannot focus on that when you get on the calls. You have to focus on the person across from you. I like to call it being a doctor. You have to figure out what's their actual pain and can you solve that? If you come into an eye doctor and your leg hurts, they're probably not the right fit for you. They're probably not going to give you what you need. Right. And hopefully they'll tell you that. Hopefully they'll say, hey, I'm actually not the best fit. My friend down the hallway, he is. That's right. And that's the biggest thing for me that I had to learn was being relational. And what does that really mean is being a human. I think is we've dehumanized sales where it's like, well, we have the script and we got to go through every question and it goes just like this. And when they answer like this, we say this. And when they have this objection, we counter with this. And does those things work? Yes, they do. And unfortunately, you're taking the human out of it. For me, I've seen it work much better by just being human, actually hearing what they need and being conscious to the fact that even what you said earlier in the show was I might not be able to meet that need, but I do know someone who does. I just had this happen yesterday. I was talking to a guy and we're talking through it. And I just said, hey, if me and my team cannot handle the issues that you have, please let me know what they are so I can find you someone. I said, I have a big network of people. That's and right. Being willing to, like you said, with the universe, with God, whatever you believe, realize that that's not the end of the world. There's more coming to you if you just release, and the right people will come. And what's crazy is when you do that, when you actually go and you help them at a high level, then usually they'll either come back around or they'll send you somebody, and it'll be at a time when you really need it. But I think that one tip, honestly, is all 3 tips.
Well, I'm laughing because the 7th step in my 7-step process, right? It's just what I've been using for 40 years. It works, right? Rinse and repeat. My 7th step, I call it CPR. It's like, you got to keep the client alive, but it's consistent, persistent, and the big word for me is respectful follow-up. And when you start to do that, people know you care. And it's funny because the step before that is where you ask for business. So when 3 things happen in my world, I don't get objections. And people go, and I go, I'm not bragging. It's not because I'm all that. I'm going to tell you why. Because if it's the right business and the client is a perfect match and they go, oh my, like, can we have started this a year ago? Why didn't I know about you? It's a perfect match. It's a beautiful thing when that happens. Second thing that happens, they want to hire me, but I know they're not ready for me, that they have all of these other things they're working on. They're not going to put the time in. And then they're going to go, this didn't work. Well, no, it didn't work because you didn't have the time to physically practice sales conversations, because you need to get your marketing locked and loaded before I can help you with your sales conversations. So I say to them, you're not ready for me. And they go, no, but I really want to hire you. I go, I know. And you're a perfect client for me. You're just not ready for me now. Do this. We'll stay in touch. 3 months from now, we can start. And you know what happens when I do that? They go, no, I want to hire you now. I can't believe you're not taking my money. I go, because it's not a good sale. See, because I'm not going to be able to help you yet. So let's wait. Or the third one is, I'm not the right person for you. I have a friend. And you know what's so funny, Steven? Every time I've done that, I've never done business with that person. I wasn't the right fit. They send me referrals. Mm-hmm. So you win just by freaking doing the right thing and not ripping the person off in front of you. But truly, first you have to understand what the client, like you said, what is their pain point? What's their real situation? And then can I help? Or do I have somebody in my resource, right, in my arsenal of networks that I can, help people out with?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's so funny. Everybody laughs when I do the CPR, because when I try to go, and they all remember CPR follow-up, right? And then follow-up becomes a thing that we forget about. Follow-up is where the devil's in the detail. The follow-up is the devil.
Oh man, I wish I would have found you a year ago, because that's something I didn't realize. And honestly, this is something that I hear quite often from people who just get into B2B. Is they're afraid to follow up. And it's like, wait, you had one conversation with them, and now you're afraid to follow up with them. Well, what if I'm bothering them? It's like, you're not bothering them until they block you. And it's like, and honestly, if you're adding value to them, if you're just checking in, hey, how are you? How's your family? What's going on with the business? Did you guys ever fix this problem? And you're just asking normal questions like a normal human, they're going to continue to correspond with you. And I said, the crazy thing is that if they weren't like you said, they weren't an ideal client at the time, but you saw where either A, they had the pain that you could handle, or B, they were about to walk into that pain, just continuing to talk to them, they come back around and say, okay, you know what? I tried it on my own. I'm actually not as good as I thought. Or, hey, we hired somebody else. It went exactly like you said, and it didn't work out. Can we work with you now? And it's like, well, let's talk through it. Let's see where you're at. Let's see if I actually can help. But you're going to miss out on a huge amount of sales if you don't just follow up and talk to people.
And can I tell you, Steven, 99% of salespeople stop after the fifth touch. And the touch could be an email. It could be a brochure. It could be I saw you at a networking event, something random. 5 touches and they stop because of that. I don't want to be a pest. Then don't be a pest. Be respectful in how you follow up and add value. And then nobody's going to tell you to stop following up.
Yes, exactly.
The right thing. It's so counterintuitive, but we're so afraid of hurting people's feelings that we're leaving so much money on the table. And in my world, that's just not okay. We should be working less and making more. And the only way to do that is to create systems, scale, follow up. I mean, all the things we talked about, my friend.
I mean, honestly, though, is if you truly believed that your product or service could help them, you would continue following up. So if you're not following up, you need to ask yourself a harder question to say, is this thing as good as I actually think it is? If you actually get real with yourself and look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, honestly, I'm just trying to make money. And I've kind of covered it up with some nice glitter to say that I care about people, but honestly, my system sucks. My service sucks. If you can uncover that motive, you're going to follow up all day. If you really had the cure to cancer, honestly, you knew 100% of people that come into your thing, your event, they take your serum and they get cured of cancer, you would tell everyone and their mom. Yeah. So if you don't believe in it enough to follow up with people, you need to work on that product or service until you believe in it enough. Yeah,
I agree. 1,000%. Sales is so easy. We make it hard. It goes back to we get in our own freaking heads. Like, stop it. Right. Sales is so, and I think we have the best job in the world, because our job is to talk and get to know people. And then even if I can help, right, I'm always like every week, I probably send out 10 to 12 emails. You need to meet you guys. There's something there. I'll let you work it out. But I just feel like there's something that you guys could support each other, do business together. So you're always introducing that. That's fun, man. That's so much fun. So how many great people we get to meet,
Yeah, I love it. You and I can get along because that's exactly what I do.
Right. I think philosophically we come from the same place. Obviously age difference. See, it doesn't matter. We're speaking the same language. And I think that's important. Business is fun, man. Business is just it's again, changing the sales game, man. That's what I'm out there doing, baby. I'm changing the sales game. Everyone, I do think you need more Steve in your life. So email him if you have any questions about his journey, again, from epic fail, right? Living in a basement. Thank God you had someone, by the way. Just that's another little blessing in there, right?
Amen.
But thank God you had someone. But going from a basement to, multi-million-dollar businesses, you're curious, pick his brain. Email him, Steven@holoco.com. I'll put that in the show notes. Go to the website, which is stevenpemberton.com. Again, I'll put that in the show notes. And I know you do have a gift for everybody. Can you tell everybody what that is?
Yeah, so it's a short ebook. I think it's 13 pages long. And in that ebook, it's going to give you everything that you need to run a successful online event. So if you're a coach, consultant, author, or you're somebody who's looking to get into the B2B space and you want to run a successful webinar, challenge, summit, any of those fun things, go and pick up the ebook. It's completely free. And it has fun pictures in it. And the way that we go about it in that book is it's literally step by step. Here's how you do it. We make it fun. We make it interesting. And it will give you the tips, the tricks, and the advice that you'll need to run your first successful event.
Yeah. And I just want to share really quickly, we're out of time, but this is an important story. I had a client and she finished with me. And then I reached out to her because I thought another person could help her with the next step in her business. And she says, "Oh, I don't have the money now." And I said, "Okay, let me know because, you're building your business. I understand you have to be mindful of cash flow and how we're spending it, right? We can't be spendthrifts." And she paid money, went to a live event herself about getting on stage, running her own event to be on stage. So I said, "Oh my God, that's great." I said, "Well, how many people do you have in your email list? Like what you're following?" She had just started the business. She goes, 30 people. So I said, I said, "Listen, this isn't my expertise, but my gut is telling me, look to get on other stages to grow your following. And then the goal will be learn from those events, what works, what doesn't, and then go and hire someone to help you with an event. But if you're not ready for that, see, again, you're not ready for that.
Right.
So this is why I love what you just said. Start with this little tutorial, right? Now you have good questions to ask foundationally. And now you could say, holy crap, I'm not ready for this. I have to put these other pieces in place, but a year from now I will. And that's how you'll continue, Steve, to generate new business because you're doing it the right way, right? If it's not the right fit, like in my opinion, that person should not have sold that to her. They knew her situation. That to me was icky business, right? And I didn't say that to the person. I would never, because you make decisions. We learn from those mistakes, right? That's what the show is about. But you're doing it the right way. So I love that. Thank you so much. And I will put that in the show notes, everyone. So you have a link to do that, especially salespeople. Oh my God. If you could start running events, even within your organization for potential clients, this is such a great tutorial to get you out there. So instead of running on one-on-one, business calls, you could do a group. Now you're going to have people at the end who are interested. What a great way to, again, scale and grow that business. So thank you for that. I so appreciate the gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, I loved having you, Steven. You're just amazing. And keep doing what you're doing. We need young entrepreneurs like you who are doing it the right way. And the success is going to be exponential. Your son's going to take over the business, right? He's only 10. we're career pathing him at 10, right? So, but thank you so much. And thank you for sharing about your wife and being vulnerable and sharing, your story because we learn from each other too.
Thank you, Connie, so much for having me. It was amazing.
A real pleasure. Yeah. And I hope you will join me weekly as we question, build, and discover together, no matter where you are, changing your sales game, changing your business, changing your life even. I truly hope my guests and I that we inspire you to take that next step, whatever it is for you. Information's a beautiful thing. If you do nothing with it, it's information in your brain. Start to put it in action, like Steve talked about today and my stories that I share. I promise you, when you move into action, magic happens on the back end. And it's beautiful and it's easy. we make it hard. So get out of your own way. Be inspired by Steve and my conversation today. Download that free gift and again, email or go to the website. Again, all of that will be in the show notes. What is your next step? Take action. That is our gift to you, or our recommendation to you. I love you all. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to me, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.net with Changing the Sales Game. Steve, thanks again. I'll see you all next week. Have a great one, everybody. Love you.